Hello and welcome to Cura Personalis, Mental Health and Ignatian Spirituality, co-hosted by Active Minds and Alpha Sigma Nu. My name is Sarah Crane. I'm the Director of Operations and Communications from Alpha Sigma Nu. Just to share some housekeeping items, this session is being recorded. Yes, if you could please show your faces, that would be wonderful. And then we just ask you to mute your microphones if you could. And Markie, I'm guessing we may have a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. Potentially? Okay, great. So if you could put your questions in the chat, and then I can help moderate that with Markie once the presentation is complete. And then I have the pleasure of introducing Markie. So Markie, is it Pasternak? Am I saying that correct? Okay, perfect. Yes. Markie Pasternak is the Manager of Impact and Engagement at Active Minds, Inc., the nation's premier nonprofit organization supporting mental health awareness and education for young adults. She manages the Active Minds chapter network and plays a key part in chapter activations, along with the strategic planning of how Active Minds will use and empower its chapters across the country. Markie is originally from Green Bay, Wisconsin, and received her bachelor's in psychology from Marquette University. During her time at Marquette, Markie served as her Active Minds chapter president and president of the Student Advisory Committee from 2015 to 2016. Markie then earned a Master's of Science in Higher Education and Student Affairs from Indiana University, Bloomington. After graduate school, Markie worked at Auburn University for 3 years in health promotion and wellness services, focusing on mental health programming and peer health education. During her time at Auburn, Markie was the co-advisor for the campus's Active Minds chapter. Markie is part of the current Contemplative Leaders in Action cohort through the Office of Ignatian Spirituality, and she considers mental health and Ignatian spirituality her two biggest passions. In her spare time, you can find Markie coaching figure skating at her local ice rink, cheering on her hometown team, the Green Bay Packers, or playing with her dog, Brooks. Thank you so much for leading us in this presentation, Markie, and I'll turn it over to you.
And thanks for the great introduction. I feel like y'all already know me. And yes, go Pack to our friend in the chat. That is an amazing connection as well. I should add 2 more loves, the Packers and figure skating. But yes, thank you for the introduction, Sarah. I really appreciate it. Hello, everybody. I can't tell you how excited I am about this presentation tonight. Jesuit schools, don't tell anybody, they're my favorite. And probably because I went to Marquette, but also just because of the mission-driven focus that Jesuit institutions have. And we're going to be combining those things together today to talk about mental health. And so I'm going to share my screen and get this PowerPoint. Oh, didn't mean to share that way. And get this PowerPoint up and going. Can everyone see okay? Yes. Okay, perfect. And can you all see the chat on the screen or not? Yes, or in the middle of the screen? Okay, good. No, I don't want you to be able to see the chat. That's good. Okay, well, we're set. And thank you again for the introduction, Sarah. So I feel like you all already know a lot about me, but I want to know about you before we get started. I want some school shout outs. I want to hear what Jesuit schools are in the audience this evening in the chat if you are interested, and I can read off some names. Creighton's here, Georgetown. Oh, we got it all coming in. Okay, let's see. Creighton, let's see. Chicago, we've got Boston College, Scranton, Marquette's here. Oh, that's awesome. St. Joe's. Okay, another Marquette, we've got Gonzaga in the house. Oh, awesome. So many great schools are here. I'm super excited from all over the country. Some that are involved in March Madness as well. I'm seeing Gonzaga and I'm like, I've been thinking basketball about you this whole 2 weeks of filling out my brackets. But anyway, all of that said, again, I'm really excited to be here, and I'm so excited to see that we have so many people here from so many different Jesuit schools. And I'm excited to tell you today about Active Minds, and then tell you about how our two worlds collide, how Ignatian spirituality and the Jesuit mission and mental health really have a lot of good overlap together. And then we can go into talking more about college student mental health and give you all some tips for yourselves and for supporting your peers. And so As Sarah introduced, I work for Active Minds. Active Minds is the leading nonprofit in the US working to end the silence and change the culture around mental health. We are an 18-year-old organization, so we're pretty young. However, we are on over 1,000 campuses across the country, whether it's through having a chapter or having a campus has hosted a speaker or what have you, but we have had presence on over 1,000 campuses in the United States and actually nationally too. And so I'm super proud of this organization. As Sarah had mentioned, I was a part of it at Marquette, and the national network out there is tremendous. I know a ton of Jesuit schools that have Active Minds chapters and an Active Minds presence. I'd love to see you raise your hand if your school has an Active Minds chapter, if you know of it, if you can raise your hand up or put your hand up. Yeah. Okay, we're seeing some. Yep. Okay, cool. Are any of you all, I know Sophia is a part of Active Minds. Is anyone else a part of Active Minds on this call? Let's see, or is everyone just Alpha Sigma Nu? And that is okay. That is all right. So actually, I wanted to let you all know. So Sophia, if you want to raise your hand on the screen. For those of you who don't know Sophia, I would like to introduce her, and I'm so happy she made it to this call. Sophia is actually our National Student Advisory President. So she is our student president for the entire country this year, and she happens to go to Boston College. So you all have a big representation in Active Minds right now. And Sophia, I'll be tapping you throughout this presentation, but Jesuit schools are being well represented this year. So Active Minds got started back in 2003 when our founder and CEO lost her brother, Brian, to suicide. She was a student at the University of Pennsylvania, and Brian was a student at Columbia. And Allison decided to create the first chapter at her school after she lost him. And then the second chapter ended up being at Georgetown, which ended up kind of being a national trend. And now we have chapters or student organizations on 700 campuses across the United States. So that 1,000 number is because of all the speakers and the other programs that we have. And so it's very exciting how much our organization is growing, looking at where it started and thinking about the impact that one person's experience had on making this like a national movement to change the culture around mental health in schools. And so I'm going to show you a quick video about Active Minds. I want to make sure, one sec, that my volume is being shared. Computer sound, I've made that mistake too many times. So yeah, this is more about Active Minds, and then we'll get into the meat of our discussion today.
Getting on a college campus for the first time can be so overwhelming because you're kind of facing the world by yourself for the first time.
Growing up, I did have a lot of family members who suffered from mental health challenges. It wasn't something that was always talked about. It's been very difficult to talk about what does it mean to be sad versus to be depressed? What does it mean to be stressed versus to be anxious?
After losing my friend, I needed something. I was struggling a lot myself.
I started Active Minds when I was a freshman in college after losing my brother, Brian, my only sibling, to suicide. Active Minds is a national nonprofit organization focused on changing the conversation about mental health. We're most well known for mobilizing young adults to get involved in and change culture around mental health.
We know that life is tough for young adults. And we also know that it's not just the students who have mental illness that have issues, it's all students. We have enough research to know that all students are dealing with things like depression and anxiety and the epidemic of loneliness.
Active Minds is serving as this institution on a campus that is getting students talking, having programming during Suicide Prevention Month, having stress relief activities during exams, screening movies, having panel discussions and keynote speakers, all with a mental health theme, so that it's not just that we're talking about mental health when there's a crisis, but we're talking about mental health every day.
One of the things I love about our partnership with Active Minds is that they are creative and engaging and relatable. It's just in this easy language, vernacular that you use on a normal. And I think that helps to decrease the stigma. It helps to start the conversation.
I love that Active Minds is able to make the topic of mental health very broad, so that way all people feel included in it.
We were thrilled to start working with the RAND Corporation to understand if Active Minds was really making a difference. It was a longitudinal study.
It has shown that the presence of an Active Minds chapter on a campus, just that alone, makes people access counseling more, feel more comfortable.
Those students had lower stigma and improved attitudes around mental health simply because they felt like their campus cared. That's unparalleled in the mental health field.
It's amazing the progress that this movement is making. I feel that through your work and in the generations to come, you're at a tipping point.
We really see ourselves as the organization that is going to propel change in America around mental health.
They're the leading organization on college campuses. All of our players come from college campuses. So now when you come into the National Football League, guess what? We're going to continue the conversation. We're going to help you to continue the conversation. So no better way to do that than with our partnership with Active Minds.
When Color Street chose to partner with Active Minds, we knew that they had an amazing story to tell. Having a national reach through our network of independent sales associates and customers, Active Minds has given us the language we need to help them get the conversation going in the communities where they are.
I think what Active Minds has done has been an extraordinary contribution to not only college campuses, but as a model for what we can do in civil society to make sure that we look out for each other in the same way that we hope people will look out for ourselves.
The empathy, the knowledge I gained from Active Minds is something that I will carry with me long after graduating from college.
Active Minds has just changed my life. It's something that I'm not sure I would be here without. It was my savior, it was my passion, and it's something that I will never forget.
Active Minds is saving lives. Active Minds is a change maker. Help us as we continue to change the conversation about mental health.
So that is us. That is Active Minds. That is the organization that I work for. And today, again, we're going to kind of combine our two worlds, mental health and Ignatian spirituality and the Jesuit mission. And so what I'd like to talk to you all about today is more about the idea of caring for the whole person is going to be our theme. I'm sure as you were listening to Active Minds and you're thinking, how is she going to combine this? You knew exactly how I was going to combine it. But there may be some unexpected twists and turns. We're going to talk about dimensional wellness when we talk about caring for the whole person. We're going to talk about the role of mental health in dimensional wellness and get in the nitty-gritty of it and get you all feeling like experts in this area. Then we're going to talk about caring for your whole self and how you can do that using the Examine, which I'm sure most of you have heard of. And we're going to talk about some innovative ways to use it. And then finally, we're going to be talking about how to care for others through an Active Minds program called VAR, Validate, Appreciate, Refer. So let's start with caring for the whole person. I'm sure many of you have heard it before. Cura Personalis, Latin for care for the whole person, one of the Jesuit values, something that is in many of the missions of your institutions. And I know when I was at Marquette, a lot of times what was around Cura Personalis was mind, body, spirit, those three dimensions, right? However, most universities around the country, no matter if they're Jesuit or another, use a dimensions of wellness model, meaning that they say, hey, there's 5 dimensions of wellness that we focus on here at our university. There's 10 dimensions of wellness, and they define these different dimensions. Shout out to Santa Clara University. I didn't see that they were on this call, but if they are, this is your diagram right here from your health promotion office, and it is fantastic, combining the dimensions of wellness idea with Cura Personalis, with these 8 dimensions of wellness. And so what I'd like to do is talk about all these dimensions of wellness and how they come to combine to make a whole person, and really what caring for the whole person means when we think about these dimensions. And so let's go over each of them and talk about what they might mean, because I think sometimes when you dive into these dimensions, you can be surprised about what they mean to different people. So does anyone want to, either in the chat, or you can feel free to unmute yourself and talk, want to start us off with how they would define physical wellness? What's that physical dimension of a person look like? What might that include? This is the easiest one, folks. We can do it. Okay, here we go. Here we go. All right, eating and exercise, getting enough sleep, staying physically active and healthy. Yes, yes, and yes. So our physical wellness is really anything to do with our bodies, right? Like our physical bodies. And that might mean going to the doctor. I mean, we've had the past 2 years, most of our country has been thinking about physical health, right? If we're sick or if we're not sick. It's going to be doing those proactive things like exercising and caring for yourself in that way. It's going to be nutrition, right? And what we're physically putting in our bodies and how our bodies are operating. Right. It was interesting too. When I worked at Auburn, I worked with a student who identified as transgender. And what he had told me was, when I look at physical wellness, I look at it really differently. Because when I think about my transition, when I think about physical wellness, I think about my transition and everything that's going on there. And for me as an educator, that really woke me up to, oh, wow, I thought physical wellness was just eating healthy and exercising. And then after his testimony and then COVID, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much more to physical wellness. It's really a big dimension. So if we go around the rest of the wheel, how about if we hop over to emotional wellness? What does that all mean to you? Let's hear some stuff in the chat. What are some things that come to mind when you think of emotional wellness? Feeling cared for. So expressing your feelings, yes, in a healthy way, right? Or sometimes not so healthy, it depends. Taking breaks. Okay, so we're talking about stress management, right? Emotional wellness is that how we deal with stress. It's our mental health. It's how our emotions manifest, right? And if we can be emotionally intelligent, if we can manage our emotions, that's all emotional wellness. So kind of getting the idea of what some of these are. Does anyone have any questions about what one means? Are you looking at one of these dimensions being like, what on earth is that type of wellness? Don't be afraid to ask. There's one or two on here that I have guaranteed that there are people on here who don't know. Thank you. Yes. Environmental wellness. What does that mean? I know when you first see it, you probably think, oh, caring for the environment, going green. I want you to take that out of your head and I want you to throw it in the other room. Not that that is not important, but what environmental wellness actually is your environment around you and how it affects your health in every other dimension. So let's think about it. Who has tried to fall asleep in a really hot room? Raise your hands. How's that worked out for you? Doesn't work, does it? That's your environmental wellness, right? The room's too hot. You can't fall asleep. You don't get enough sleep. How are you feeling the next day? Bad, right? Let's think about more environmental wellness. Has anyone ever had a roommate who smokes inside their apartment? That could be really bad environmental wellness, right? For our friends who may have asthma or something. Environmental wellness could be how you organize your space. It could be, are there things in your space that you like? Are there plants? Are there, are there things around you that make you happy? All these sorts of things, all these environmental factors that affect your physical health, your mental health, all these other things are going to be your environmental wellness. And that's really important, right? You could be in an environment where you don't feel safe. And so that way you can't be healthy. You could be in an environment, that again, isn't the right temperature, or maybe it's too dark or too light and you're not able to get sleep or focus or concentrate. And so that's really important to think about when we think about our environmental wellness. What others on here are you thinking, oh, I'm not quite sure what that looks like in this context? All right, here we have some questions. Intellectual wellness. All right, intellectual wellness is talking about learning. Okay, so intellectual wellness as college students is going to be probably one that you focus on a lot. And what is the key metric at most colleges that is supposed to measure intellectual wellness? What do y'all use usually to measure? Yeah, grades and GPA, right? Again, that's another thing. I want you to take it out of your brain and throw it out the window. That is one metric to measure your intellectual wellness. But other questions to ask for your intellectual wellness are, do you like your classes? Are your classes too hard? Are they too easy? And are you bored? Do you feel that your classes are actually going to contribute to what you need to know as a professional? Do you have the kind of brain space to learn outside of class? Do you feel that you're kind of cognitively sharp and you're able to pick up new ideas quickly? You're able to pay attention. You're able to be flexible with ideas and challenge your beliefs and maybe even the beliefs of others sometimes, right? That's going to all be intellectual wellness. And so it's really about the idea of, am I open to learning new ideas? And am I in a good space to do that? What am I able to learn? Are there things I need to employ in my everyday life to be able to be more intellectually well, whether it's focusing strategies, things like that, or even just learning more information. Let's see what else we have in occupational. So in college, I feel like a lot of times students think occupational wellness or define occupational wellness as, okay, what I'm doing after this, right? So when we're thinking about career, can I write a resume? Do I know how to interview for a job? Do I have the means of getting a job? Do I have a network? Do I kind of know where my career's going? Those are all valid metrics of occupational wellness. But also, for those of you who may have a job on campus, that also goes under occupational health. Is your job paying you enough to be a student and to stay in school? Is your job a good environment where you want to go and where you feel safe? Is your job, being good to your mental health? Those are all occupational wellness ideas, right? And I think we've seen through the pandemic, there's a lot of folks who are challenging the idea of what it means to be well in an occupation, work from home, all those sorts of things. And so to college students, I know you're at a different point with occupational wellness, those resumes, kind of that career focused readiness. But occupational wellness will, when you're out of college, will replace how much you focus on intellectual wellness because of your job. And so that's something to kind of keep in mind. Distinction between occupational and financial. Okay, so financial wellness is going to be, do I have enough money to live? And also, am I literate enough in finances to be well? Can I make good financial choices? Am I anxious about money? Or am I able to feel like I have enough money to live my life? It's going to be looking at, do you know what your credit score is? Do you have a good credit score? Are you able to pay back your loans? All that kind of stuff. If you want to buy a house one day, are you able to do that? Do you know how to budget your money? Do you know how to use your money? Are you financially literate? More or less, or, again, do you have enough money, right? So if somebody isn't, has not good financial wellness right now, maybe they don't have enough money to do certain things, even like basic things, right? That physical wellness idea of like nutrition could get a lot harder. And so all the dimensions of wellness really affect each other in a lot of different ways. Are there any other questions about any other dimension? Let's touch real quick on spiritual, since we are combining these two things together. Something I like to say about spiritual wellness is that spirituality and religion are two different things, right? And so a lot of religions like Catholicism have spiritualities within the religion. So like Ignatian spirituality, the spirituality of the Jesuits and Saint Ignatius is one spirituality within Catholicism. However, when we think about spiritual wellness, I want you to actually think bigger than religion. There are a lot of folks who have a spiritual, or everyone has spiritual wellness, but might not be religious. I'd argue even atheist folks have spiritual wellness. Spiritual wellness, defined broadly, is how you either connect with something greater than yourself or how you connect with something deep within yourself. And that can look different for a lot of people. And so going forward today, even though we're talking about Ignatian spirituality, if you're on this call and you're like, yeah, I go to a Jesuit school, but I'm not Catholic, or I don't know how I'm feeling about my spiritual life right now, I'm not sure exactly where my beliefs lie, this will all still be relevant to you, and the things I'm going to show you and talk about, you can use in secular ways as well. So please do not feel like you do not belong in this conversation. You do belong here, and everybody has spiritual wellness. Okay, question in the chat I'd like to ask now. A couple of questions about your own dimensions of wellness, and I want you to really reflect on this, all right? So I'd like to know, which dimension of wellness out of these 8 is the most important in your life right now? And let's see some answers in the chat. All right, we're getting some here. Let's see, we've got emotional, spiritual and intellectual. I get that. Social and emotional, social, intellectual, financial, emotional and social, emotional, social and financial, physical. Yeah, hard to choose. I'm gonna go with environmental, social, emotional. Yes, so many, and you can have 2 or 3 that are really important too. Would anyone like to share with the group why you picked the dimension that you picked? Yes, Sophia.
I guess, well, I picked 3 kind of, but I can do financial. I didn't really think about it as much, but when you said like anxiety over money, my dad's planning on retiring in a few years, and I feel like that's put a lot of stress on our family, just like kind of anxiety on me, like I don't want to spend too much or anything. So then like that's kind of led to some anxiety over that. But yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you for bringing that up, Sophia, because what I even heard in your answer is 2 dimensions. I heard financial and social, because you're talking about your family and how your relationship with your family is tied into your own wellness, and the decision that somebody in your family is making is being tied to your own financial wellness, and that's a very real thing for a lot of people. So thank you so much for sharing. Would anyone else? I would love to hear 1 or 2 more people share why they picked the dimension they picked. Yes, Tara. Tara?
Yeah, it's Tara.
Awesome.
For me, I would say occupational right now, because I am a senior who will be graduating soon, and I'm planning on going into healthcare and sort of trying to figure out where I can get a job with certifications, if I have enough vaccines for it, how I'm going to get, all of the income, how I'm going to be able to pay for a house. So that's been on my mind probably more than school has, and it's sort of figuring out all those little things as it goes on.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So that is a huge deal. That is, a big thing when you're in that stage of life that you're in right now, a graduating senior in college. And Tara, what I really liked about what you said is you mentioned so many other dimensions in there, but you kind of painted your life picture right now is the occupational dimension is in the center, and all these other dimensions are being affected by it, right? Your environmental, where you're going to live, your financial stuff, your intellectual wellness that's being put on the back burner because of this really preoccupation in a good way. with occupational wellness, because you know that's where you need to be focusing. Your physical wellness, because of COVID and your vaccines and all those things affecting your occupational wellness, right? So all of these are so interconnected and so crucial to creating that whole person and that whole life of a person. And as you reflect on yourself, I'm sure you're thinking, oh yeah, all of these seem to affect each other and kind of create this balance. So let's talk about mental health. That was probably a word you noticed that wasn't on the dimensions of wellness. Well, there's a lot of talk out there. A lot of folks consider mental health and emotional wellness one and the same. And some people think they're totally different, two different things, that mental health is kind of the ocean and emotional wellness are like the waves, and they're ever changing and ever flowing. And so that's one way to think about it. But I'd like to, for this presentation, pretend that emotional health and mental health kind of mean the same thing. And I'm going to go over some other definitions with you here to help you understand the difference between mental health and mental illness. And so the truth is that we all have mental health, right? Each one of us. So even if you're not diagnosed with a mental health issue per se, you don't identify as having depression or anxiety or OCD, bipolar disorder, many mental health conditions that are out there, you still have mental health to take care of and to keep in tip-top shape. Just like somebody that doesn't have cancer or doesn't have a broken leg still has physical health to take care of, right? We still have mental health. And so looking at this, I love this graphic. I learned about it when I was at a conference down in New Orleans. And what this diagram shows is that everyone has mental health, but it's on a spectrum, right? So if your mental health isn't doing well, you might be languishing in your mental health. Maybe you're stressed out that day. Maybe something's going on with a partner. Maybe something's going on with a roommate or a friend, and you're languishing in your mental health. Maybe another day or another season in your life, you're flourishing. You're really able to handle stress well. You're really resilient. Maybe there's other dimensions of your wellness that are affecting that resiliency and that kind of peace that you're feeling. You're able to exercise a lot. You're eating well, all that kind of stuff. So your mental health is flourishing. Right? But then we've got this other axis right here going horizontally, that is mental illness. And you'll notice that you can be diagnosed with a mental illness, right? And you can be on the high mental illness side, meaning, yeah, I have a mental illness and it's pretty severe. Or you can be over here and have a low mental illness and maybe not be diagnosed with anything at all, not be living with anything at all. But somebody with mental illness can still have flourishing mental health. Right? Just because I have OCD doesn't mean that I can't be having a good mental health day. It doesn't mean that I'm always going to be having a bad mental health day. And this diagram really helps paint that. And so, if you live with a mental health issue, you're always probably going to be on this side unless your mental health issue specifically is one that can be cured. But if you are always going to be living with a certain disorder, you may always be over here, but you're still able to flourish and languish. And so when you think about that in the context of, mental health of others as well, you might know somebody with depression, you might know somebody with anxiety or another issue, but they also can have that languishing and flourishing mental health. So this conversation, no matter if you're diagnosed or not, is relevant to all of us because we're all somewhere on this spectrum at all times. So let's talk about the stigma of mental health. And so at Active Minds, this is our main mission, right? It's destigmatizing mental health. I'm sure you heard that in that video over and over and over again. Some of these dimensions of wellness, when we talked about the whole person, are less stigmatized than others. Physical health isn't really that stigmatized. Some parts of it are. But a lot of it is, oh yeah, I can tell anybody that I'm going to the doctor, for example. I'm going to the doctor for a physical. Okay, that's not stigmatized really. And I think mental health is becoming less stigmatized. A lot of people are more open and saying, oh, I'm going to a therapist. I'm going to my therapy appointment. And that's great. But 20 years ago, that wasn't the case, right? You wouldn't say, oh, I'm going to see a therapist. You'd be like, oh, I'm going to the doctor. I have an appointment. right? And why is that? It's because of stigma. So stigma comes from the word stigmata, meaning a mark of shame. And it, oh, something went wrong here with the PowerPoint. Something didn't transfer over from PowerPoint to Google. I'm sorry. Something looks a little weird, but diagnoses were intended for treating people, not for public labels. So when we think of somebody who has depression or has OCD or has schizophrenia, that diagnosis was made because a clinician or a psychiatrist or psychologist would say, hey, you have these symptoms. I think you'd be experiencing this. And then there's a whole line of treatment for that person, right? So it made it easier when you diagnose somebody to treat somebody. Well, these labels kind of got taken out of control a little bit, and they became stigmatized. So then it was all of a sudden, oh, this person has this mental illness, so this means this about them. And there's some attitudes that went along with it, some attitudes of anger, of fear, of disgust, of all these negative things. And so now what we're trying to do as a movement is destigmatize the mental illnesses, to say, hey, you can be living with these things, but that doesn't mean that you're always in a bad mood or you're always stressed. That doesn't mean that you are lazy. It does not mean you are dangerous if you have a mental health issue. That would be a stigma, right? So because mental health is one of these dimensions of wellness that we can't physically see, like our physical health or our social health and who you're hanging out with, or our financial health, we can't count it. We can't say, oh, look, here's the amount of money I have to work with. It's sometimes harder to picture, and it's sometimes easier to form attitudes about it and beliefs about it that aren't really true. So how can we combat stigma? The first way would be to change our language. This is something you can do right now. So using something called person first language, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it before, but it's when you don't say, oh, Markie is so OCD. You'd say Markie lives with OCD. You wouldn't say, oh, just kind of make up a name here. Sally is bipolar. You'd say Sally lives with bipolar disorder, because you're putting the person first, care for the whole person, right? You're putting the person before the illness. And you're not saying that this person is defined by their disorder. You're saying that the person lives with it, and it is only one dimension of their life, right? Our dimensions of wellness. And so it's important to think about how you're phrasing things. And if you're perpetuating prejudice through your language, or if you're helping solve the problem by really putting the whole person first, just like the Jesuits and St. Ignatius tell us to in the value of Cura Personalis. The second thing you can do to combat stigma is take care of your own mental health. Even if you don't have a mental health disorder, what are you doing to proactively take care of your own mental health and mental well-being every day? And the third thing would be to support others' mental health and to be literate in how to talk about mental health with others who might come to you and say, hey, I'm experiencing depression and I don't know what to do. Knowing how to respond to that is in a really healthy and a educated and informed way is going to really help destigmatize mental health. And we're going to get into these two kind of points next. So I want to talk about the Examen. I want to talk about some Ignatian spirituality stuff. Who has done the Examen before? Can you get a show of hands? Hands, we're seeing some hands. They're seeing some hands. Yes, okay. Ooh, we're seeing lots of hands. Okay. Does somebody want to summarize the Examen for me? I want to take a stab at just a nice little summary of what the Examen is to you. Yes, Kaylee, a new face. I love it.
Sure. I think of it sort of as like a meditative exercise that encourages you to sort of reflect on your day and on the things that went well and what didn't go well in your day, and think about ways that you can sort of improve yourself moving forward.
Yes, exactly. It is a reflection on your day. And the Examen was created by St. Ignatius himself. And it is something that all the Jesuits are actually required to do every single day. They're always told, pray as much as you can, but you can never skip your examen. And so when you're a Jesuit, you do this every day. And it's a really great strategy, not only for your prayer life, if you identify as Catholic or even just spiritual in general, but it's really great for your mental health. And the examen is something that you can really take and do whether or not you identify as religious or you don't, because it includes mindfulness meditation. And so the examen includes these 3 following things outlined on the slide that have actually been shown in research to correlate with better mental health and better mental wellness. So gratitude. The examen employs gratitude, and research has shown that those who practice gratitude, not are just grateful, but practice gratitude, list things they're grateful for, think of things they're grateful for, have a gratitude journal, like this practice of naming things they're grateful for and intentionally taking their time out of their day to do that, have better, higher rates of mental health. Let's talk about self-forgiveness. And a lot of positive psychology books, research, it's shown that people who talk to themselves more positively and say, and have that more positive rhetoric in their head, that positive self-talk, generally have better mental health, are more resilient, are able to deal with their emotions and situations in better ways. So what's an example of something that might be negative self-talk? Can I see anything in the chat that might come up, or you can say it if you want? What's something that could be negative self-talk? Something you might say to yourself that's negative. I don't deserve X, Y, Z. Yes, I am lazy. I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough, right? All those negative thoughts. Oh, you're so stupid. You shouldn't have done that. That's that negative self-talk, that little negative thing in your voice in your brain telling you that you're not good enough, that you can't do anything right. Comparing yourselves to others, right? That's that negative self-talk. Positive self-talk, on the other hand, is not lying to yourself. Sometimes people think it is. It's not saying, oh, you did so well on that test when you actually got an F, right? But what positive self-talk is it's forgiving. It's saying, yeah, you may have failed that test, but you can do better next time. You may have, maybe that date didn't go well, but there's somebody out there for you. Maybe you messed up and said something mean to your roommate, but that roommate will hopefully forgive you and you can do better next time and you can be a better roommate, right? So that positive self-talk is forgiving, that self-forgiveness. And that's really a big part of the examen at the end, is reflecting on what you could do better the next day. And also going through your day with that kind of lens of, that positive self-talk and not being negative. And then finally, as Kaylee mentioned, the exam is really mindfulness meditation. It's shutting everything out, and it's really going through mentally a guided meditation of your day. So let's talk about the steps of the examen. First, we become aware of our own space. And if you're religious, that would be meaning asking God to be with you, right? And you ask God to come to you, or to be in your heart, or to be present, because you're going to talk to him. If you're not religious, I would argue that it's meaning kind of quieting yourself and being aware of your emotions and where you are kind of as a state, right? The second thing you do is you think of 2 or 3 things that you're grateful for. And if you listen to the Examine podcast with Father James Martin, which I highly, highly recommend, he'll walk you through the entire examen and narrate it for you in about a 20-minute podcast. But what he says under the part of being grateful and naming the things you're grateful for is he tells you to savor them, right? So it's not just making a list. It's not just saying, oh, I'm grateful for the meal I ate today because it was really good. I love Chipotle. It's not just saying, oh, I'm grateful that I got to see my mom. It's really replaying that. Replay yourself diving into that burrito bowl and tasting that fresh guacamole, savoring that, right? It's, replaying that conversation with your mom and how she made you smile and laugh because you hadn't got to see her in a while. It's savoring that and bringing back those good memories. Then the third thing you're going to do is mentally replay your day from start to finish. If you're religious, the idea is to look for where God was in your day, which can really help with that self-forgiveness and that positive talk, right? Because if you were being negative all day and your brain was telling you, oh, you really suck, like you haven't been doing, you're not good enough for this or that. When you walk through that with God, that negative self-talk isn't really there, right? Because you know God doesn't think that about you. If you are a secular person, try to walk through your day objectively, right? So the idea is to kind of step back and look at your day instead of being all up in your thoughts and your feelings about your day, right? To kind of look back, step back, and watch it all unfold like it's a movie. Then once you replayed your day, you're gonna reflect on where you might have went wrong, where you might have screwed up. We all screw up sometimes. And you're gonna forgive yourself for what you did wrong and think about how you can maybe do better the next day. If you are religious, you may ask God for forgiveness, but it's really important to forgive ourselves, right? So those are going to be the steps of the examine and what you're going to do. And this is a great meditation for your own mental wellness. I know for me, it made a big difference. I did the examine a few times when I was at Marquette. And I didn't really think much of it. I'm going to be honest. When I was your age, when I was back in college, I thought it was a cool prayer. I did it in theology class a few times. Then I kind of moved on with my life. Then 5 years later, quarantine hits and it's 2020 and I'm living in Auburn, Alabama, because I'm working at Auburn and my family's from Wisconsin and I'm by myself in an apartment living with a dog. And I have a boyfriend who lives 10 minutes away who I can see sometimes, and everyone else is gone because I had to stay back for work. And it got really lonely. And around July, I was working with a student at Auburn who was in our AA program. And he told me one reason he wanted to join AA, because I worked in health promotion, was because he wanted to, or something that inspired him is that he was becoming Catholic and he was really excited about it and wanted to do better with his alcohol consumption. And I asked him what led him to become Catholic. And he said, reading The Jesuit Guide to Almost Everything by Father James Martin. And he went on and on about the book. And I thought, I love James Martin. I went to a Jesuit school, but I've never read this book. And so I read it and I thought, oh my goodness, this is exactly what I needed to read and kind of rechange my attitude and to be less lonely, to have God with me. And so starting that July of quarantine, I started doing the examine every day, and I did it every day for a year, consistently every night. And my mental health shifted 110%. My life shifted 110%. I started working fully remote for Active Minds through that time. And so for me, the examine helped me even look on those really mundane days during quarantine where nothing was happening, where I was just in my apartment by myself, but helped me be grateful for these little things that happened. And so if you're really feeling like you've had a rough day, or maybe you feel overwhelmed, you feel swamped, maybe you're feeling bored, maybe you're feeling like nothing's going on in your life, no matter what season you are in, this meditation can really, really give you some benefits to your mental health. And I challenge you, if you do the examine, to think about all your different dimensions of wellness while you're going through it. That's what St. Ignatius would want you to do too, right? Think about, where was your social health during that day? Where was your emotional wellness? Where was your physical wellness? What environments were you in? You can reflect on all of those things. And so again, if you're interested in the examine, you're interested in trying to practice this, highly recommend the podcast by Father James Martin, The Examine. So now let's talk about caring for others. Sophia, can I put you on the spot real quick?
Yeah.
Our Boston College friend, do you want to explain what VAR is to our folks?
Yeah, sure. I love to. And I really love that you mentioned all the different dimensions of mental health as well. I'm actually outside of our Office of Health Promotion, and they're actually on the wall. I don't know if you guys can see
that.
Yeah, that's lovely. But anyway, VAR. I love the VAR model because it makes it really clear and simple as to how we can care for the others. And we actually did a little bit of trainings with different groups on our campus. So I think this is really applicable to everyone. But anyway, as we could see, VAR stands for validate, appreciate, and refer. So basically, it helps us to support others when someone approach you, or even when you just observe that your friend might be going through something, and you start by validating their emotion. Because when we reach out for support, we definitely want to make sure we want to feel like we belong. We want to feel like others understand, right? So validate stands for validation, and you don't just turn people away and say, oh, what? And then A stands for appreciation or appreciate. So when someone shares whatever they're going through with you, you certainly appreciate them for sharing, because it means that that's a lot of trust in you, that it takes a lot of courage for them to share this with you. So you want to appreciate that. And then the last one, refer. I really like refer. I think when it connects the friend or whoever that needs support with the resources that could really best support them, it connects them with the community, with the professionals, and it also supports you because you're not taking on all these responsibilities by yourself. It's not just your job to support the other, but it's really refer, so the entire community can counseling to support the person. I'm sure Markie has more to say, and she could explain this more clearly, but that's what VR means to me. And I think it's super helpful because it's 3 steps, and that ensures the person feels supported, and that also ensures that we are supported in the process of supporting others. So I'll give it back to Markie.
Thank you, Sophia. That was an amazing summary of VAR. Took the words right out of my mouth. So yes, when we think about caring for the whole person, we want to think about caring for ourselves and doing taking care of our own mental health. But now we're going to talk about caring for others and how we can do that and care for the whole people and others. And, with Active Minds doing the work of destigmatizing mental health and mental illnesses, a lot of folks now, it is starting to be destigmatized. A lot of people want to talk about mental health and are open to talking about mental health. I'm sure you've heard it. Oh, we want to talk about mental health. We need to talk more about mental health. Well, the next question is how? How do you talk about mental health? And a lot of people don't know the answer to that. And Active Minds came up with a solution. We came up with validate, appreciate, refer. Like Sophia said, a simple 3-letter acronym that tells you how to respond when somebody shares that they are going through a mental health issue that maybe you haven't experienced, or maybe you had, or, it might doesn't have to even be a mental health, illness, but it could be a stressful event. It could be, somebody is going through a big change that you haven't experienced before. And you may not know what to say, but you can start by validating their feelings, which would mean, not invalidating them. So not saying, oh yeah, like that doesn't sound that hard or anything. I think you'll be fine, right? That person's going to shut down. They're going to be like, oh, well, this person doesn't understand and they don't hear me and they don't want to hear me. What we do instead is validate. So if I say, yeah, I think I have depression and I can't get out of bed in the morning, it would be really validating if someone said, yeah, that sounds really difficult. I'm sorry you're going through that. Or if I say something like, yeah, I've been really having a hard time getting over this breakup. Like I'm just so heartbroken, and I'm getting to the point where I just don't really want to be around people. To respond saying, that makes sense. Like, I'm sorry you're going through that. And what you're feeling is valid, is a really good response, right? You're not pretending what I'm going through if you'd never felt that way before. You're not infringing on me with your own experience, being like, oh yeah, I remember when I went through a breakup and it really sucked. And like, then you start talking about your old feelings for your ex-partner. I'd be like, okay, this is about you now. This isn't about me, right? That's invalidating. We want to be validating. We want to say one of these phrases. Can anyone else name a phrase that might not be on this, that could list, that could be validating to somebody if they share a hard experience with you? You can say it in the chat, no worries. It's understandable to feel this way. I would feel the same way. Yes. Yep. It's understandable. Very good. Yes. So validating, right? Oh, we got one more. I'm here for you. I'm listening. Yes. Just simply saying that you're here for the person is validating. And the next is appreciate. So we're going back to this idea of gratitude, right? So we're going back to what we talked about for the exam and for positive mental health, being grateful. Saint Ignatius actually said that the root of all sin is ingratitude. And I know that sounds scary and really harsh, but when you pick it apart, it's really interesting, right? So when I think of sin, I think of something I did wrong, somewhere I really morally screwed up. I'm not, we're not in the old days where we think mental health's a sin or anything like that. That is not valid. That is way over in left field. We're talking like, I purposely lied to somebody. I stole something. I was mean, right? When we think about those things, a lot of times they are grounded in ingratitude. If I'm mean to my mom and I get all mouthy with her and I hang up the phone, I wasn't really being appreciative of our relationship, right? I wasn't really being grateful for the fact that I have a mom who wants to call me and talk to me, right? I was treating her kind of like crap. You can think about that. If when you do something wrong, a lot of times it goes back to ingratitude, even if it's the simplest of ingratitude, like having a mom, right? So appreciating the person is so important here. When we validate somebody, we have to appreciate their honesty. And again, that seems so just minute of like, oh, this person shared this with me. Of course, they needed to be honest. I needed to know what was going on. I'm their friend. No, that's a big deal. It can be really hard to be honest. This could be the biggest moment of somebody's life, sharing that they live with depression, or sharing that they live with a mental health issue, or sharing with you that they're feeling a certain way they feel like they shouldn't be feeling. It could be a big turning point. So you need to appreciate their honesty. Thank you for sharing. It can be hard to find the words with everything going on these days, but I'm really thankful that you told me how you're feeling, right? So appreciate the person for everything that they are and for the fact that they were brave enough to share with you what they said. And then finally, you're going to refer, right? So you as a student are not a mental health expert, and you don't need to be, but you're educated now on how to have these conversations and maybe what to do going forward. So if someone says, I think I might have a mental illness of some sort, you would say, hey, have you tried the counseling center? Like, have you thought about going in for an appointment to the counseling center? Or do you have a therapist at home? Maybe you all have a telehealth service like Timely MD or something like that on your campus, where you're like, have you tried a virtual counselor, someone to talk to? If it's something that I'm stressed out about this test, that's not a mental health issue, right? They're just stressed about their biology exam next week, and it's not a just, like it's real. So I shouldn't have said that, but they're stressed about their biology exam. You might be like, hey, you know what? You want to go on a walk tomorrow and maybe go get some Starbucks, right? That's even refer. Just something that simple is referring to some self-care, referring to something that might make the person feel better and be in that more flourishing mental health space, as opposed to that languishing mental health space that we talked about at the beginning. So this really requires some empathy and some humbleness here when we do the refer, right? Because you don't want to assume what the person needs. So you might have to ask them, like, what do you need right now? What would feel good for you? What would get you in a better headspace than you're in right now? And it might be something different than you, because all those dimensions of wellness that you have, the other person has them, but they might be in different spaces and different stages than you're in right now. So their needs might be different. But it's always good to start with thinking of, how would I want to be treated in this moment? I think I'd want to go to the gym with somebody. So you might ask, do you want to go to the gym with me tomorrow? Sometimes when I exercise, it really helps my mental health. And if they say no, say, what would you like to do then? But refer can mean all these different things on a scale of hey, let's go on a walk, or let's watch a funny TV show, to, hey, let's go to counseling and get you some help, right? It's a spectrum of different things and refer depending on what the issue was that they said. So what to avoid when you're having these conversations, right? Trying to fix the issue or rush to a solution. You want to go through the steps and really like in our exam and savor them and really let the person talk, really lean into the conversation. You do not want to be critical or judgmental. We are trying to seek first to understand. What saint said that? Anyone know? Seek first to understand. Where does that come from? That comes from some Catholic stuff too. Anyone? That's in the prayer to Saint Francis of Assisi. Yay. But yes, so seeking first to understand is a big deal. Francis, sorry, someone in the chat did say Francis. Yes, good job. So we're seeking first to understand, right? Rather than to be understood, rather than coming in with, oh yeah, you should try this. We're starting with validate. We're starting with appreciate. We're starting with understanding. And then we're going to the refer. Again, we don't want to use our own experiences to relate before hearing them out. So it's okay to be like, hey, you know, I felt this way too once. But don't do that too early, because otherwise you're just making the conversation about yourself. And that's not who we're focused on here. We're focused on the other person, right? Caring for the other person. And that's really important when we're using VAR. And finally, obviously saying it's not that bad, right? You don't also want to like catastrophize it either and be like, oh, this is the worst thing ever. But somewhere in the middle, that validation of being like, yeah, it's understandable why you're feeling this way, is going to be what the secret sauce, if you will, that middle in between. So validate, appreciate, refer, right? Validate, appreciate, refer. So before we end our time together, I wanted to just give a shout out to our chapter network. I believe we are on, I mean, it's got to be like 15 Jesuit campuses. You know, I know we're at Marquette. I know we're at Boston College. I know we're at Georgetown. And I can name a whole host of other schools. Loyola Maryland's even up on the screen here, where we have chapters. So if you're not involved with Active Minds, but you liked this stuff, you've connected to it, you thought, wow, I'm really interested in mental health, go check out your chapter. It could be a great opportunity for you to learn more about mental health and take that passion you have for Alpha Sigma Nu and put it somewhere else on campus. You would even maybe with your Alpha Sigma Nu chapter like to partner with your Active Minds chapter for some sort of event or service or a mental health program of some sort. Feel free to do that. Active Minds, we really encourage our students to partner with other organizations on campus. And you can tell them that someone from the national office spoke to you as a national group. So please feel free to reach out to our chapters. You can check on our website to see if your school has a chapter under at activeminds.org/chapters. And if your school doesn't and you want to start one, you can contact me and I will help you do that. So thank you all for having me this evening. I really appreciate it. And thank you for everything you do on your campuses, from one Alpha Sigma Nu to another. I really am so proud of all of you for making it through quarantine and being back on your campus and doing the work that you do.
Thank you, Markie, for the outstanding presentation and discussion. This was so great.
Oh, thank you so much.
Open it for a question or two if anyone has any right now. Okay, perfect.
Yes,
if anyone has a question, please raise your hand and unmute yourself and go for it.
Yes, Emily.
Hi, yeah, so I was wondering, I noticed in the video and a lot of what we've talked about are kind of focusing on like recognizing mental health issues and encouraging help-seeking behaviors, which is obviously like the mission of Active Minds. But does Active Minds do anything to sort of help with like access to resources? Because I know at even Georgetown, like access to resources, even if you've decided to find them, isn't always possible for students with, you know, financial concerns and quality of resources and all that. Does Active Minds sort of make it part of their mission to help with that as well?
I guess what we do is our chapters help connect students to the counseling center is the idea, right? So if it's like, man, I don't know where to get information about counseling, I'm confused about it, I didn't know we had free counseling or counseling at all on our campus, Active Minds is there to be that bridge from the counseling center or from the health promotion office to the student body. As far as accessing care though, it's hard to make that a national mission of ours because it looks different on every single campus, right? Some campuses have free counseling for every student who wants it, and there's no wait line, and you could get in to see a counselor tomorrow. Other campuses have wait lines that are a month long, and they're trying to figure out how to do that. What we can do, though, is create a community and have a community for you to understand mental health better. So your mental health literacy, right? Understanding and being educated about mental health is what Active Minds does. And if you want to advocate for policies on your campus that'll help change that in access to care, Emily, Active Minds has those resources too. So we can't really help specifically with access to care directly, but we have programs and resources and guides for policy change. So if you want to get more counseling staff hired at your counseling center, if you want to get free mental health counseling, we can help you to go about do that on your campus. What else? Any other questions? Sophia, I saw you said in the chat, I personally find Active Minds programming like Your Voice is Your Power also helpful in empowering students. Yes, to advocate for access. Yes, that exact thing I just talked about, the policy change advocacy is Your Voice is Your Power. And that's what it's called. And it's through Active Minds. And something that's become really popular since the pandemic is advocating for telehealth to stay in place after the pandemic. And that's something we're working with a lot of campuses on doing right now. Anything else? All right. Well, Sarah, I'll turn it back to you then.
Thank you all for joining us, and we will distribute this recording so we can have it. I think it was extremely valuable. So thank you, Markie. We really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you again for having me. I love what you all do, and it was just an honor to be asked to do this today.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Much, Markie.